The compound was noisy that night, but not with joy. Adana was on the floor, holding her stomach, crying in pain. Her time had come. The baby was ready. She looked at her husband, Obina, her eyes wet with fear. Please, help me. The baby is coming. Her voice shook. But instead of standing up, Obina crossed his arms and hissed. His sisters burst into laughter. Adana screamed louder as the pains grew worse. She crawled towards the door, begging, please, somebody help me. But they all turned their backs. The man who was supposed to protect her walked away. The neighbors whispered in shock, how can a husband abandon his wife in labor? How can a family laugh at her pain? That night, Adana's life would change forever. What nobody knew was that the same girls they mocked would one day rise to power, and the family that rejected them would crawl back, begging for mercy. The day Adana married Obina, both families filled the compound with music and laughter. Drummers beat the talking drum until the goats at the fence jumped. Aunties ululated. Cousins blew whistles. Children ran between the chairs with oily fingers from fried meat. Adana's father, Chief Onkem, stood proudly in his white kaftan. His chain shop business had fed half the neighborhood for years. Her mother, Mama Nkechi, owned 3 fabric stores at the market and never failed to give credit to women who were starting small. They came with long convoys of cars, coolers stacked with food, and a band that played until the sun dropped. Yet for all their wealth, they kept their voices soft that day. They did not want to show off. They wanted peace. They wanted their daughter to enter her new home with blessing, not noise. Obina's side wore simple lace and big smiles. His mother, Mama Oba, hugged Adana with both hands and kept saying, you are our daughter now. His sisters circled the bride, teasing the brother, tying a small wrapper on his waist and making him dance. It was a good joke, because Obina had grown up in a house of sisters, 4 of them, and he knew women's ways more than most men. He used to say, I can braid hair better than a salon girl, and they would all laugh. That day, he looked at Adana like a boy seeing the sea for the first time. He couldn't stop smiling. He held her hand to the elders to greet. He served palm wine to her father with both hands. When the kola nut was broken and prayers were said, everyone agreed. This marriage looked strong. The early months were sweet. Adana moved into a small but neat flat. She rearranged the sitting room, added curtains with gold edges from her mother's shop, and taught Obina's youngest sister how to bake puff-puff on Sundays. She woke early to make breakfast and sent voice notes to her husband in the afternoon. Have you eaten? Do you want okra or egusi tonight? He sent back pictures of his plate and silly comments that made her laugh at home. When she visited her parents, she carried small envelopes back to Obina's family. Transport money for his mother, school books for the nieces, rice for the house. She wanted his people to feel the warmth of hers. She wanted no gap between families. But even in happy seasons, shadows can stand at the gate. The shadow here was not poverty, it was expectation. People began asking the same old question in new polite ways. At church, Sister Adana, how is the home? Any good news? In the market, our wife, when will we come and dance naming ceremony? At first, the teasing felt light. Adana would smile and say, soon, by God's grace. Obina would pull her close and change the topic, but his mother's words carried weight. In the kitchen after a Sunday lunch, she lowered her voice. My daughter, you know your husband is my only son. I carried 4 girls and only him. Our name. Who will carry it, if not him? A son is important. She didn't say it like a fight. She said it like a prayer. But a prayer repeated every week can start to sound like a warning. Obina kept the peace by hugging his mother and joking. Mama, allow us. Children come from God, not pressure. His sisters would nod, but later in the room they talked in whispers. We love Adana, but she must give our brother a boy. When Adana heard those whispers through thin walls, her stomach tightened. She told herself not to worry. She told herself to breathe. She kept working, kept loving. When their first child came, a girl with eyes like morning water, the compound danced again. Mama Oba carried the baby to the street and shouted, "See our princess!" Adana cried happy tears and believed that love would drown out the noise. The noise did not drown. It returned after the second girl, a little louder after the third, and sharp after the fourth. Neighbors began to greet Obina with half jokes that were not jokes. Our in-law, you have 4 chairs in your sitting room, but no heir to sit at the head. His mother prayed longer. His sisters avoided certain topics and then brought them back as concern. Even Obina, who had always been gentle, started sitting quiet in the evening, staring at the television without watching it. Adana noticed. She brought him tea, massaged his shoulders, tried to pull him back to the man who once tied a wrapper and danced in the middle of the compound. Sometimes, he softened and held her close. Other nights, he said nothing and went to bed early. Through it all, Adana's parents never pushed panic into the air. Chief and Kemp would hold her hand during visits and say, "You are not a factory. You are our daughter." Mama and Kechi spoiled the girls with uniforms, books, shoes, and those small pink lunchboxes they loved. Their side of the family had money, but they never used it to shame Obina's family. They used it to build a net under their daughter, in case the rope one day cuts. The rope began to strain. On the afternoon, an auntie said it out loud in the open. "Our name will end if there is no son." Everyone went silent. Adana looked at Obina, waiting for his old smile, his old joke, his shield. He did not lift his eyes. That was the first time fear touched her in a way she could not swallow. She went home, stood in the bathroom, and told God, "Give me strength. Give me wisdom. If there is a son in my future, let him come. If not, keep my home from breaking." For a while, peace returned. The girls filled the house with drawings and laughter. They played doctor with toy stethoscopes, lined up dolls for court as if in a small courtroom, built things from cardboard, and asked questions about planes that made their father smile despite himself. Adana watched them and saw futures. She saw a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, a pilot, and a girl whose fingers moved so fast on the computer that even the mouse could not keep up. She saw queens before the world gave them crowns. But one sentence from a visitor can become a seed, and a seed, if watered by gossip and fear, can one day become a tree whose branches block out the sun. On the evening that tree finally cast its shadow over their roof, Adana placed a hand on her belly and knew her life was about to change again. Adana's hand shook as she held the pregnancy test. The small pink line was faint, but it was there. She leaned against the bathroom wall and closed her eyes. Her 4th daughter was barely out of toddlerhood, but hope pushed her into this risk. She thought, maybe this one will be a boy. Maybe Obina's smile will return. Maybe his family will stop whispering whenever I enter the room. She hid the test in her wrapper and went to the sitting room. Obina was watching the evening news. She sat beside him, her eyes searching his face. I am pregnant, she whispered. He did not jump with joy the way he had for the first two pregnancies. He did not even touch her stomach. Instead, his face tightened. Adana, why? Who told you to get pregnant again? Did I not say 4 girls are enough? You want to kill yourself because of people's mouths? She looked at him with wide eyes. I thought this time it may be a boy. I wanted to give you peace. But he only shook his head and turned back to the television. From that night, the space between them grew. Obina's mother and sisters were not kind. They did not hide their feelings. At family gatherings, they muttered loud enough for Adana to hear. This one is wasting her time. We don't want another girl. Our family name will die if there is no son. One of his sisters told him directly, Brother, you are young. You can still marry another wife before it is too late. You must not put all your future in the hands of one woman. Their words fell like stones on his chest, and slowly he began to believe them. Adana bore it in silence. She went to her parents' house and sat quietly in her mother's kitchen. Mama Nkechi saw the sadness and pulled her daughter close. My child, no matter what they say, children are children. A boy does not carry heaven on his head. Raise your daughters well, and they will bless you. But Adana's father, Chief Nkem, was harsher. If that man cannot stand beside you in times of trial, then you must prepare your own path. Don't lose your life because of tradition. Adana nodded, but in her heart, she still hoped this fifth child would heal everything. The months dragged. Her body swelled, her feet hurt, but she worked harder than before, cooking, cleaning, caring for her girls. She prayed at night, whispering to the child in her womb, please, be strong. Please, bring peace. But destiny does not bend to human fear. On the night her labor began, the storm that had been gathering in her marriage finally broke open. And what happened in that compound would shock everyone who heard the story. That night, the contractions came like thunder. Adana was bent over in the sitting room, clutching the edge of a chair. Sweat poured down her face. Her 4 little girls stood by the doorway, their eyes wide and afraid. Mama, what is happening? The oldest whispered. Adana tried to smile through the pain. It is okay, my daughters. The baby wants to come out. But her voice cracked, and she gripped her stomach as another wave of pain tore through her. She called for Obina, who was sitting in the corridor with 2 of his sisters. Please, the labor has started. Take me to the hospital. Her voice trembled. Instead of rushing to her side, Obina looked at her coldly. His younger sister burst into laughter. Hospital? For what? We don't want to waste our time again. The last 4 times we rushed, it was only to come back with girls. We are tired of carrying shame. Adana's eyes widened in shock. Sister, how can you talk like this? A child is a child. But her mother-in-law, who had just walked in, shook her head with disgust. No, Adana. A son is a child. A girl is just a visitor who will marry and carry another man's name. You have already filled this house with 4 visitors. We will not follow you to bring another one. Obina kept quiet for a while, then finally hissed. Adana, you forced this pregnancy against my will. You wanted to prove yourself. Now face it alone. He turned away as though her cries were nothing. The sisters laughed louder. One even said, if this one is a boy, call us. If it is another girl, don't disturb us. Adana screamed as the pain grew stronger. She fell to her knees, tears mixing with sweat. Her daughters rushed to her crying, Mama, don't die. But the family only waved them away. Neighbors began to gather outside, whispering, is this man truly abandoning his wife in labor? One said. God forbid, a woman is between life and death, and they are laughing. At that moment, one of the neighbors ran to call Adana's parents. Within minutes, Chief Onkem's car screeched to a halt in front of the house. He burst into the compound with his wife. When he saw his daughter lying on the floor, groaning in pain, rage filled his voice. Obina, you useless boy, you let my daughter suffer like this while you sit with your sisters. Obina stood, embarrassed, but his mother quickly defended him. Chief, control your mouth. This is our family matter. Chief Enkem pointed a shaking finger. Family matter. My daughter is dying in your house, and you call it family matter. If you people don't want her, I will take her myself. Come, Adana. They lifted her into the back seat of the car as she cried and clutched her stomach. Her daughters scrambled in, holding their mother's hands. Obina did not move. His sisters folded their arms. His mother muttered, "Let her go. Maybe then he will marry a woman who can give him a son." As the car sped toward the hospital, Adana's mother wiped her tears with a scarf. "My child, hold on. God will not let you die like this." Her father's jaw was tight, his hands gripping the wheel. "After this, you will not step foot in that house again. You hear me? You will come back to your father's house. Enough is enough." When they reached the hospital, nurses rushed with a stretcher. "Where is the husband?" one asked quickly. Mama Nkechi shook her head bitterly. "He refused to come. They said they don't want to see another baby girl." The nurse froze in disbelief. "What? A man abandoned his wife in labor because of gender? This world is finished." The labor ward swallowed Adana's screams as the doctors prepared for delivery. Outside, her parents sat, tense and afraid. Chief Onkem muttered under his breath, "If that man dares to come here, I will throw him out with my own hands." But inside, Adana's battle with life and death had only just begun. The bright lights of the hospital burned into Adana's eyes as they wheeled her into the labor ward. Her breaths came in short, desperate gasps. A nurse wiped her forehead. "Madam, stay strong. You will be fine." But the pain was like fire tearing through her body. She clutched the sheet and cried, "Doctor, please don't let me die. My girls need me." The doctor, a tall man with tired eyes, examined her quickly. His voice was calm but firm. "Her blood pressure is high. The labor is complicated. We must act fast." He turned to the nurses. "Prepare the theater. She may need assistance outside." Chief Unkem paced the corridor like a lion in a cage. Mama Nkechi sat with the four girls, pressed against the sides, all of them crying. The eldest looked up at her grandfather with wide, wet eyes. "Papa, will Mama be okay?" His throat tightened. He bent down and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your mother is strong. She will fight, and we are here with her." But when he stood, his face hardened. He muttered under his breath, "If that man had come here, I would have broken his bones myself." Back inside, Adana screamed as another wave of pain gripped her. The doctor leaned close. "Listen to me, madam. You must push now. Don't think of anyone else. Think of your child. Focus." Tears blurred her vision. "My husband. He promised to be by my side. Why did he leave me?" The nurse squeezed her hand. "Forget him. We are here. Push, madam. Push." With one final heart-shaking cry, the room was filled with the sharp wail of a newborn. The nurse lifted the baby high. "It's a girl." The words echoed like thunder. Adana sobbed, her strength gone, but her arms reached out. "Give her to me." She held the tiny child to her chest and whispered through tears, "You are mine." They can laugh, They can curse, but you are mine. The doctor wrote notes on his clipboard, then looked at her seriously. Madam, you are lucky. The labor was too hard. If you try again, it could kill you. I advise you strongly, close your womb. No more pregnancies. Save your life for these children. Adana closed her eyes. His words pierced her heart, but somewhere deep inside, she felt a strange peace. She had prayed for a son to save her marriage, but now she saw the truth. Her daughters were her life, her future. She kissed the newborn's forehead. You are not a curse. You are my crown. Outside, the nurse came to the waiting family. She made it. The baby is fine. Mama Nkechi broke down in tears of relief, hugging her granddaughters. Chief Onkem raised his hands to the sky. Thank you, God. Thank you. From today, she is finished with that house. She will not go back to those wicked people. But as they celebrated quietly, the gossip had already begun to travel through the hospital corridors. Nurses whispered, patients shook their heads, and everyone repeated the same shocking line. Her husband abandoned her because he did not want another girl. The morning sun crept through the hospital blinds, but Adana felt no warmth. Her body ached from the night's struggle. The newborn lay beside her in a small cot, wrapped tightly in a white cloth. She looked at the tiny face and brushed a trembling finger across her cheek. My feet, princess, she whispered. Her voice cracked, not from rejection, but from the fear of what awaited her outside these walls. Chief Onkem entered the room, his face still hard. He looked at his daughter, then at the baby. For a long moment, he said nothing. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with authority. Adana, listen to me. You will not return to that man's house. He has shown you who he is. A husband who abandons his wife at the edge of death is no husband. Pack your children and come home. That chapter is closed. Adana's eyes filled with tears. Papa, but what will people say? They will laugh at me. They will call me a failure. Her father's eyes flashed. Let them talk. Were they the ones who held your hand when you cried in pain? Were they the ones who carried you to the hospital last night? My daughter, a woman who dies for pride, leaves orphans behind. You will not die for pride. You will live for these girls. Mama Nkechi wiped her own tears and sat beside her daughter. Your father is right. Forget Obina. Forget his family. You have parents who love you and children who need you. That is enough. She leaned down, kissed Adana's forehead, and whispered, we will carry you until you can carry yourself again. That afternoon, Adana was discharged. Her parents bundled her and all 5 girls into their car. She did not even step foot into Obina's compound. Neighbors watched silently as Chief Onkem's car drove past, heads held high. Some whispered, ah, she has left. Others said, it is better. That man did not deserve her. Obina heard the news from his sisters. He shrugged, pretending not to care. Let her go, he said coldly. I will marry another wife, one who can give me a son. His mother supported him. Yes, my son. You must save our name. Marry again before it is too late. Within months, he took a second wife. There was no ceremony, no laughter, only quiet determination to prove himself. Meanwhile, Adana adjusted to life in her father's house. It was not easy. Nights were long, her body was still weak, and the cries of the newborn often kept her awake. Sometimes she held the baby and thought of Obina, of the promises he once made when their marriage was still sweet. Tears would come uninvited, but then she would look at her daughters, curled up beside her, and remember her father's words. Live for these girls. Her parents kept their promise. They provided food, clothes, and school fees for the children. Chief Onkem even told Adana, when you recover fully, you will go back to school. Your life is not over. You must rise again. At first, she laughed bitterly at the idea, but deep in her heart, a seed of hope was planted. Adana began the slow journey of rebuilding her life. What no one knew was that the daughters he despised would one day become the pillars of his strength and the downfall of his pride. Adana's first weeks back in her father's house were filled with silence. She moved like a shadow, feeding the baby, bathing the older girls, then retreating into herself. Sometimes at night, her mother would find her sitting on the veranda with tears in her eyes, staring into the dark. "Mama," she whispered once, "was I wrong to marry him? Did I choose wrongly?" Mama Nkechi pulled her close. "My child, you did not fail. A man who cannot see the treasure in front of him is the one who failed. Don't let his blindness define your life." Her father was less gentle. One evening, he called her into his study. Books lined the walls. Papers were stacked neatly on the table. He looked at her with sharp eyes. "Adana, you are still young. You cannot sit here wasting away because of one man's foolishness. You will go back to university. You will get a degree. You will show your daughters that their mother is not a weak woman." Adana gasped. "Papa, after 5 children? How can I? Who will employ me?" Chief Nkem leaned forward. "Leave that to me. All I ask is that you be willing. Your children will see you rise, and that will teach them more than any sermon." It was not easy. She would wake before dawn to prepare her daughters for school, then rush to lectures with her notebooks. She carried her baby strapped to her back during long queues at registration. Some students whispered and laughed, calling her the old mother in class, but she ignored them. Each time she opened her books, she told herself, "I am not just studying for me, I am studying for the 5 crowns God gave me." Her daughters watched her closely. The eldest began helping with chores, bathing her sisters, and even cooking small meals. "Mama, read. I will take care of them tonight," she would say, pushing her mother's books toward her. Little by little, the house filled again with laughter. The girls, though young, carried themselves with quiet determination. Years passed. Adana graduated with honors. Her parents and daughters clapped the loudest on that day. She secured a government job, her first steady income in years. She came home with her first salary, and instead of buying clothes or jewelry, she bought school shoes and books for her girls. "This is our beginning," she told them, smiling through tears. At night, she prayed over them. "God, if Obina wanted a son, then let these girls be better than 10 sons. Make them strong. Make them unshakable." What she did not know was that her prayer was already working. The girls were growing into something extraordinary, each with a fire that no one could dim. Soon, people would call them not just daughters, but queens. Adana's house slowly transformed into a place of dreams. Every corner carried the sound of books opening, pens scratching, and girls asking questions that surprised even their teachers. The 5 sisters were different in personality, but they shared one thing: a burning determination to prove the world wrong. The eldest, Amara, carried the weight of being the firstborn with quiet strength. She loved to play with a toy stethoscope when she was small, pressing it against her sisters' chests and saying, "Breathe in, breathe out." At school, she devoured science books. Teachers whispered, "This one will wear a white coat one day." True enough, Amara went on to study medicine. Years later, she walks through hospital corridors with her head high, saving lives with the same hands that once healed her mothers during that painful night of labor. The second daughter, Ephioma, was bold and stubborn. As a child, she would dismantle radios and fans, then reassemble them. One day, she told her grandfather, "I will build things taller than trees." She grew into an engineer, designing bridges and roads that carried her city forward. When men doubted her at construction sites, she simply smiled, rolled up her sleeves, and showed them calculations they could not argue with. Workers called her Madam Iron. Chinelo, the third, was quiet but sharp. She loved debates, loved arguing, until even adults found themselves trapped by her logic. Teachers often sent her to represent the school in competitions, where she always returned with trophies. It was no surprise when she became a lawyer, standing in court with confidence, defending the weak and winning cases that older lawyers feared to touch. People called her the lioness in a wig. Adais, the fourth, had her eyes on the sky. From childhood, she would sit on the roof of their house, pointing at planes. "One day, I will fly higher than anyone." Her mother thought it was childish fantasy, but Adais refused to let go. She studied hard, fought through training that many men failed, and finally wore the crisp uniform of a pilot. The day her plane lifted into the clouds, Adana wept with pride. The last born, little Onyinye, was the fastest learner. Her fingers danced on keyboards from the time she was 10. While others played, she was coding, breaking down computers, and teaching herself skills from the internet. By 25, she was running a tech company, hiring men twice her age, and creating apps that spread beyond the country. Newspapers called her the digital queen. Together, the sisters earned a reputation. In a society that had once mocked their mother for only giving birth to girls, these daughters became the pride of the city. People began to call them the Five Queens. They built houses for their mother, renovated their grandparents' home, and sponsored scholarships for other young girls. Wherever they went, heads turned in admiration. Adana no longer walked with her head bowed. At community meetings, people whispered with respect, "That is the mother of the Five Queens." She smiled quietly, remembering the night she lay on the hospital bed, praying that her girls would not be seen as curses. Now, the same city that once mocked her lined up to shake her hand. What she did not know was that far away, Obina's world was collapsing piece by piece. While her daughters were rising like stars, his search for a son was leading him into darkness. While Adana's home blossomed with laughter and achievement, Obina's compound grew colder with every passing year. His second wife, Ungozi, entered with promises from his family that she would save the name. For the first few months, his mother praised her. "This one will give us a son," she said with certainty. But joy turned into mourning when Godzi's first pregnancy ended in a stillbirth. Then the second. Then the third. The house that was once filled with celebration was now filled with whispers and tears. Neighbors began to shake their heads, so he threw away a good wife because of girls. And now, see, his sisters defended him in public, but in private, even they were restless by the fourth loss. Ngozi herself packed her bags one night and went to her parents' house, leaving Obina angry and ashamed. Still desperate, Obina married a third wife, Chidinma, younger and more naive. At last, she bore him a son and a daughter. His chest swelled with pride. Finally, he said, my bloodline is secure, but children are not medals to be displayed. They are souls that need care. He provided little. Money was scarce, and the burden of feeding fell heavily on Chidinma. The boy, Uchenna, grew wild. By his teenage years, he was running with a gang of street boys. They smoked, they fought, they stole. Teachers sent warnings home, but Obina shrugged. Boys will be boys. At least he is strong. Strength without discipline soon turned into trouble. Uchenna was arrested more than once for theft. The name Obina had tried so hard to protect was dragged through the mud. His daughter, Ebeli, carried her own wounds. Tired of hunger and insults, she ran away at 16 with an older boyfriend. Some said they saw her boarding a bus to the city. Others whispered that she had been abandoned in a strange town. Obina never found her. Nights were long, and he sat awake, muttering, how did it come to this? The same neighbors who once mocked Adana now mocked him. In the beer parlor, men laughed openly. So having a son and a pride were more important than his wife. Eh? Now look, his son is a criminal, and his daughter has disappeared. At the market, women shook their heads as he passed. This is the man who rejected his daughters. God has repaid him. Even his own sisters avoided him. The same mouths that once pressured him to marry another wife now kept silent, ashamed. His mother, old and frail, had no more strength to defend him. She sat in a corner, muttering prayers that went unanswered. Obina's business began to fail. Customers, who once respected him, now chose other traders. Money dried up, friends disappeared, and the once proud man who mocked his wife's daughters was left sitting alone in a house filled with ghosts. By the time sickness struck him, an illness that drained his body and left him coughing day and night, he had nothing left but regrets. But regret cannot cook food or pay hospital bills. And so, the man who once laughed at his wife in labor now found himself crawling back to the very family he abandoned. The cough started small, just a dry tickle in his throat. Obina thought little of it at first. He swallowed herbs, drank bitter roots, and told himself it would pass. But weeks became months, and the cough grew deeper, shaking his chest until neighbors could hear him struggling at night. His body grew thin, his once broad shoulders, now sharp bones under his shirt. Even walking to the corner shop left him gasping for air. His third wife, Chidinma, grew tired. There is no food, no money, and now you are sick, she muttered. Your son is always in police trouble. Your daughter is gone. What kind of life is this? She packed her bag one morning and left, just like the others before her. Now alone, Obina sat in his silent house, coughing and thinking. Memories haunted him. He saw Adana's face that night, twisted in pain as she begged him to take her to the hospital. He heard her voice crying, please, the baby is coming. He saw his daughter's wide eyes as they clung to her, terrified. And he remembered how he turned his back, how his sisters laughed, how he sat eating groundnuts while his wife was fighting for her life. Each memory was a knife twisting in his chest. Word spread quickly in the community. Obina is sick. He has no one to care for him. Some shook their heads. It is the seed he planted. Let him eat the harvest, others said. But he still has daughters, doesn't he? 5 of them, the ones he rejected. Swallowing his pride, Obina asked for directions to Adana's home. When he finally gathered the courage, he dragged his weak body there, leaning on a stick. He stood at the gate, trembling, and called out. The security guard eyed him suspiciously. Who are you looking for? My My wife, Obina stammered. Adana, please tell her Obina is here. The god frowned. You mean Madame Adana, mother of the 5 queens? You wait. He disappeared inside. Obina knelt at the gate, coughing into his fists, waiting for an answer. When the guard finally let him in, he stepped through the tall iron gates and froze. Before him stretched the mansion with wide verandas, glass windows gleaming in the sun, and cars lined neatly in the driveway. His mouth fell open. Was this truly Adana's house? The same woman he once mocked for only producing girls? He shuffled forward, leaning heavily on his stick. Inside the compound, he saw the evidence of lives he could hardly imagine. A sleek SUV pulled in, and out stepped his second daughter, Ifeoma, dressed in an orange safety vest, a helmet tucked under her arm. Workers behind her carried rolled-up blueprints. She barely glanced at him before walking past. Mama, I came straight from site. We signed the bridge contract today. Obina blinked rapidly. Bridge contract? His mind spun. So this girl, she is an engineer. Before he could recover, Chinelo arrived, carrying a briefcase, her phone pressed to her ear. Yes, tell the judge I will present evidence tomorrow. No, we will not lose this case. She ended the call and kissed her mother on the cheek. Mama, the governor's office is expecting me this evening. Obina's jaw dropped. Judge. Governor? He muttered, stunned. This one is a lawyer? The front door opened, and Adaeze strode out in a crisp pilot's uniform, her cap tucked under her arm. She laughed with her younger sister, Onyinye, who was showing her something on a tablet. Mama, Onyinye's new app just hit 50,000 downloads in 1 week, Adaeze said proudly. Onyinye grinned, adjusting her glasses, and we already have investors from abroad. Obina staggered back. Pilot, app, investors. His head spun. It felt as though the ground had shifted beneath his feet. All his life, he had begged for one son to carry his name. Now he saw 5 daughters, who had carried not only his name, but their mothers, their grandparents, and their entire community to heights he never dreamed of. At last, Amara, the eldest, stepped forward in a white doctor's coat, stethoscope still hanging from her neck. She looked him in the eyes with no trace of softness. Father, I just finished a surgery that saved a man's life. Something you could not even do for your own wife. Obina's lips trembled. He wanted to speak, but no words came. His pride, the pride that once made him abandon Adana, shattered into dust. He fell fully to the ground, tears streaming down his face. God forgive me. I was blind. I did not know. I did not know my daughters would be greater than sons. Adana stood silently, watching him. Her daughters gathered behind her, their shoulders squared, their expressions firm. Finally, Chinelo spoke. We will not treat you the way you treated our mother. We will pay for your hospital bills. We will rent you a house so you don't die in the street. But understand this, your place in our lives will always remain small. You chose to abandon us. We cannot erase that. The other sisters nodded. Onyinye added softly, we are not doing this because you deserve it. We are doing this because Mama raised us to be better than bitterness. Obina covered his face with both hands and sobbed. The sound echoed through the mansion like the final collapse of a man who had built his house on pride. The news of Obina's return spread quickly. Neighbors who once mocked Adana now shook their heads in wonder. See how life turns, they whispered. He abandoned his wife because she had daughters, but those same daughters are now the pillars of his survival. In the market, women clapped their hands. God lifted her. She is the mother of Queen Adana, no longer carried shame. She walked with her daughters beside her, each one a testimony that girls are not curses but crowns. Obina lived quietly in the small house the daughters rented for him. He was alive, but his pride was dead, and everyone who saw him remembered the lesson. A man who abandons kindness for tradition will one day eat regret. What did you learn from this story? Do you believe daughters can carry a family's name just as strongly as sons? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe for more powerful African stories.